What happens when you're speaking, but people don't seem to understand? Maybe it has to do with your phrasing. Maybe the grammar is confusing. Maybe pronunciation is getting in the way. Whatever the case, our goal as communicators is to get our message across. We need to be understood. Today, I'm sharing a few helpful tips to use when you want to clearly communicate in English. Let's get into it. One, repeat. Try repeating what you said. This would be the easiest fix, so to speak, because maybe the reason they didn't understand what you were saying was because they simply couldn't hear you. So definitely repeat what you said. If it seems like it was really loud, there was a lot of background noise, and the person would understand if you just repeat it again. 2, ask comprehension check questions. Does that make sense? Do you see what I'm getting at? Do you catch my drift? Are you following? Should I rephrase that? Comprehension check questions are a great way to check in with the person and make sure that they are on the same page as you so that you can continue the conversation without there being any hiccups or communication barriers. Because as we're communicating, we don't want to move on to the next thing without making sure that the person that we're communicating with is following, right? So a comprehension check question is a great way to make sure that the listener is following what you're saying. Number 3, rephrase. If it's not making sense to the listener, try to say the same thing using different words. This is what I mean by rephrasing the message. Say it as simply as possible. There's no need to use complicated vocabulary or intricately woven phrases with complex structure and grammatically complex sentences just for the sake of sounding important or educated or smart, right? The best thing is to communicate in as simple terms as possible. That actually shows clear thinking, right? Clear communication reflects clear thinking and clear logic. So as tempting as it might be to bust out a complicated sentence or some intricate grammar or complicated vocabulary that you might not even really fully grasp in terms of its meaning, it's much better to stick to the simple way of saying it. Say it as simple as possible because the listener will have an easier time understanding. 4, avoid expressions and idioms. Expressions and idioms are beautiful aspects of language, and I'm certainly a big fan because they carry so much meaning. If all communicators understand the idiom, that's all right, but sometimes they can be a barrier in cross-cultural communication settings. Every language and culture has their own set of idioms that are not easily translated from one language into another. Sometimes it's close to impossible to really capture the meaning fully. Many of the meanings derived from expressions and idioms are figurative, meaning they are not literal. For example, if you translate that expression word for word, it would not make sense. This is because expressions are not literal, they're figurative because they evoke metaphors and imagery that are context-based, and when translated into another language, they might not make sense. So if you're trying to get a point across, unless the listener has the same or similar linguistic and cultural backgrounds to you, in order to understand the idiom, it's best to steer clear of these beautiful language and culture gems when you're trying to communicate clearly with someone from another culture. But that, of course, should not prevent you from sharing or explaining the expression if you desire to do that. 5, Speak clearly and loudly. Try to speak as clearly as possible. Use a medium pace, not too slow or not too fast. Take deep, slow breaths through your nose to engage your diaphragm and use this powerhouse to generate the power to speak loudly. That'll enable you to use volume without shouting and without straining your vocal cords. Very important. Use nonverbal communication. That's number 6. You can convey feeling and emotion using your facial expressions and your body language. You can demonstrate meaning through your hand gestures. You may even feel so inclined to act something out. Don't be shy. It can be a lot of fun and it gets meaning across really well. 7, take the long, winding road. Sometimes we might have to explain something which takes up more words and more talking, but that's okay. This is especially true if you're searching for a word that might be on the tip of your tongue, but you don't know the exact word. In that case, it's okay to explain the meaning instead. It might be a circuitous route, but that's okay because your goal here is to be understood. And like I said, sometimes we can use a few words to do that, and at other times we need to use more words, and that is totally okay. So these are the 7 ways you can communicate when the listener doesn't seem to understand. Communication barriers are a natural part of communication. But when we're aware of communication barriers, we can find ways to deal with them so that we can get our message across. And once you get enough practice, you might even be able to prevent the communication barriers from getting in the way of your message in the first place. Make sure to practice these communication techniques so that you're speaking as clearly and confidently as possible. All right, advanced English learners, that's it from me today. I hope that you enjoyed this lesson. Be sure to share this lesson and the channel with people you think would really benefit from these advanced English communication lessons. All right, I will see you in the next one. Keep up the awesome work and keep on advancing your English. Bye for now.